Hiya! Hey! Good evening, viewers, listeners, wherever you are tonight. We want to welcome you to Ashford, Garley live here on British Radio Africa. We're having some technical difficulties. That's why we're coming at 1 o'clock. I guess in studio, we're trying to get things straightened out. Apparently, we'll be fine. So we're here live coming right now. We want to welcome you wherever you are to British Radio Africa. Indeed, tonight going to be a very good discussion. My host, the legendary, I call him the legendary guy who doesn't keep lions are stronger than the lion. Jeda said to my Jay. He's not in studios tonight. He's taking care of personal stuff. So I will be broadcasting here tonight by myself. And I'm sure going to have some good people coming on tonight because the topic tonight is going to be very interesting. Something that you all want to be a part of. So I want to welcome you. We want to say thank you to some of our compatriots on the ground in Liberia, our broadcast partners who carry our programs live. And we want to thank 105.3 Top FM, Swedru, Grandview County, that's Top FM, and Joy FM 101.5, and Live FM 104.1 out there in Liberia this evening. Wherever you are, in the diaspora or Liberia, elsewhere in Africa, Asia, wherever, we want to welcome you. My name is Volcano Shelton. I'll be with you here this evening. We also want to remind you that our broadcast is on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We come on at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 1 a.m. rather, GMT, across the GMT zones. So if you're just joining us, invite a friend, like Ashford always says, grab the popcorn, get something to drink, and let's have fun together. I tell you, it's going to be a great night, okay?
L'ingénieur Toumba Kinkela.
I want to quickly look at some of the guys who are out here tonight, call some of the names to welcome them. We want to start off with our man Remie Gray in Dallas, Texas. Weirdo, Clarence Stiller, John Wade, Emmanuel Jackson. We also want to welcome Clarence Stiller, Manuel Siawe Jr., Vivian Zobei. I got it right. We want to say welcome to British Radio Africa tonight. We're still trying to get things set up. I believe my studio guest is ready. But one of the things we want to talk about here tonight is the Armed Forces of Liberia. You and I know the Armed Forces of Liberia will be celebrating its annual anniversary on February 11th. And so the topic here tonight is the Armed Forces of Liberia. If you looked at our promo, we talked about whether the armed forces is ready, is equipped, is sizable enough to protect our 43,000 square mile borders around our country. What we hear now is that the current enlisted men and women of the armed forces is about 2,100. But we also keep hearing that our population is about 5 million people. Now, that's a conglomeration of actual citizens and foreigners come together to make up the overall population. Do you think that 2,100 men and women can protect 5 million people? Do you think that? So tonight I have someone who worked for the Armed Forces of Liberia. He served our country very well, and he is a retired colonel of the Armed Forces of Liberia. He is no stranger to many of us who know the name Colonel Remie Gray. Colonel Gray, are you there? Can you Can you hear me? I see you trying
Yeah.
to juggle through things.
No, no, I'm listening to you. Of course, I'm here. Good evening, Mr. Shelton. Happy to be here.
So I want to thank you for accepting our invitation at Bridge Radio Africa, Ashford Garley Live. Ashford couldn't be here with us tonight, but you're in good hands, and I believe this discussion going to go very well.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I appreciate you taking off your busy schedule. When I called you, I knew straight it was going to be difficult to get you. You're a very busy man, but you said I will do myself. So I want to thank you for coming on tonight. I believe that this topic is dear to your heart because we talk off the record, and
Mhm.
you have some great recommendation to put out there. Hopefully, the current government or governments to come can beef up the armed forces of Liberia. So welcome. But let's just talk a little bit about you, probably a minute or two, just so people will know um, the credibility of the conversation tonight. Who is E. Remie Gray? Colonel E. Remie Gray.
Well, as you know, I'm a family man. I'm a family man. Have children of my own serving the armed forces of the United States currently. I've got a son in the Marine, and I've got another one in a different branch. So those two individuals, continue the tradition in the family. And I've also have two daughters. One in college, the other is about to get to college. Um, Conor Gray is somebody who served the armed forces of Liberia from 1981, and my some of my classmates would be like Ted W, the late Ted Queer, the I think the brother of the just deceased Oscar Queer. He's my class mate, Saib Blatian, and I mean, I can call like six different people. But I started off my career as a cadet at the Ministry of Defense. I was brought in just before the coup by Burley Holder, the late, I think the old man, I'm not sure whether he's still alive, but
Now, when you say
uh,
the coup, you mean the 1980 coup?
yeah,
Okay,
I started off
that's a
right
long
after.
time.
Yeah, started off. Well, we got age. I started off right after the rice riot, and I went in there to serve as, just like office clerk. We used to call them filing clerk or something. And so then the coup came. Some of us left, but I started coming to the Ministry of Defense every vacation time to make sure um, I, perform my cadet duty. By then, I was just a cadet, as we used to call them. And in addition to that, the late Mark Shaw, I think he just passed. So after the coup, of course, it was a different era. And so I walk up to Colonel Mark Shaw and I say, Chief, I want to join the army. He said, you look small. I say, well, Chief, it's about strength. It's not about size. He said, you're right. You know, So he got me into the armed forces. He himself, when I went to when they were mustering for zero, what we call the recruit process, I got there. Somebody had taken my name, and those days were a different era. You have to speak certain dialect before they can even listen, give you, the ears. So I felt so bad, and I went back to Colonel Shah, and then he got angry.
You mean someone was using your name or someone took your spot?
Someone took my name and my spot.
Wow. So
And
corruption started ever since.
so,
So they
uh,
already had an E. Remie Gray already there.
oh
And the
yeah,
real Remie Gray now.
yeah. So when
Okay.
I came, because I could not speak the dialect, they pushed me out of the fence,
Okay.
and then so I had to go back to the. May he so rest in peace. He was a very nice guy, a good guy. So I was so anxious. He told me, he said, we'll go there tomorrow. Then I said, Chief, they are recruiting now. Someone has taken my name. He said, don't worry about that. We'll go there. So as God could have it, yeah, they had sent the group of people that's supposed to train. So he put me in this small jeep. We drove all the way to Camp Tody, and they mustered the men that day. And they say, who is Edmund R. Gray here? And then a guy came up who could barely speak English. So the woman said, "What you got your name for?" He said, "Chief, that's my name." Look at the man in the eye. He said, "That's my name. Who your father? Who your this? What's the R for?" He called different name. So the commandant there, the training commandant, says, "Okay, we'll have Edmund R. Gray 1, Edmund R. Gray 2." So on the base, I became the 501 person that was there. So I was the extra Edmund R. Gray 2. So somebody out there has my name. I don't know, maybe. But that's just to tell you, that's my humble beginning with the Armed Forces of Liberia, and then I got transferred to Bummy, and I met another good guy, Colonel Solo. At the time, I'd passed the early entrance, but I just had not find the time to go to college because once you start your profession, the army was not where you go say, "Chief, I want to go to school." You have to wait a little bit.
Got to pay
Hmm.
your dues.
Yeah. So they passed me from here and there, but one of the functions I enjoy was that every training from 1982 onward, I was sent as a recruit to go among the soldiers to weed the goat from the sheep. That how much security conscious Samuel Doe was.
Hmm.
So because he believed that there were undesirable elements that would join the
They were
army,
joining the
just
army for their
yeah,
own ulterior motive.
yeah. So that was my first, one of my first assignments. So every night now I would go train among the folks, and so you meet like five different groups that would call me either 8-2, either 8-1, either 8-3, because some of them believed that I was training among them, but I was doing my job. Uh, well, Mr. Sheldon, as time goes by, I worked my way through the army and then rose to the top, end up becoming the special assistant to the Minister of Defense, and I took opportunities of so many. I even served General Bowen before he was even general. He was a colonel. After the my training, I told him, he say, "My son, you sharp. You stay with me. You be my clerk typist." I said, "Yes, sir, Chief." So that I started, and then I got transferred to 6th Battalion there, and I rose through the rank, came to different training and so on and so forth. But Colonel Gray is also an academic. I read PhD criminal justice. It's actually Homeland Security, and I do have a dissertation out there, but I have yet to defend that dissertation. But I hate to talk about my academic. I like the work to speak for itself. In addition to that, I've written so many security articles. Matter of fact, I'm still a standard contributor for there's something called Jane Defense. It's a British defense. So that's how I make sometimes I make the money, and I right now I'm looking at joining the Library of Congress to see if I can get a research work there to do.
All right.
But mhm.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think a lot of people have understood a lot about you, and now credibility has set the pace. So let's start this thing. I want to read something here quick. It says the Armed Forces of Liberia, um, tracing its origins, is formerly was a militia that was formed by black colonists in what is now called Liberia, and it was founded as the Liberia Frontier Force, and that took place in 1908, and it was retitled in 1956. For almost all of its history, the armed forces have received considerable material and training assistance from the United States. For most of the 1941 through 89 period, training was largely provided by U.S. advisors through their assistance, and has not prevented the same generality of low levels of effectiveness common to most of armed forces in developing world. So
Mhm.
it says here that the U.S. has been 100% involved with everything about the armed forces of Liberia.
It's true.
For most of the Civil War, the armed forces saw little action apart from a reinforced company group which was sent to the Democratic Republic in the 1960s. And I heard something about that. Yes, when we were growing up, the Congo War.
Yeah.
This changed with the advent of the first civil war in Liberia in 1989. The AFL became entangled in the conflict, which lasted from 89 to 1996 up to 1997, and then the Second Civil War, which lasted 1999 to 2003.
Mhm.
As of 2014, the armed forces of Liberia now consist of two infantry battalions, a service support company, a military police company, a logistics command, and the Liberian National Coast Guard. For several years after the war, a Nigerian army officer served as chief of staff. After President Weah was elected, Prince C. Johnson III became the chief of staff, promoted to Major General, and Geraldine Doe, rather George, deputy chief of staff, promoted to Brigadier General. So that's just a little synopsis of the armed forces. But when we look here, it says now the current active enrollment or enlisted men and women 2,100. But out of those 2,100, it is established that 1,800 is the top number because some people have deserted the post. And the current budget of the armed forces is just $12.9 million, close to 13 million. And that will include salary, logistics, and all those things. Remy, do you think the armed forces of Liberia is ready, is equipped, is prepared to protect the territorial borders of our country from the east, the west, the south, and the north?
Mr. Sheldon, one should reasonably believe that the armed forces of Liberia is ready. Um, but then the devil is in the detail. But one should readily tell themselves that we have an armed forces of Liberia that is ready to defend the territorial integrity of the nation, of our nation. But there are so many constraints. Matter of fact, because of the role played by the army during the Civil War, um, so many suggestions came up that we should not even have an armed forces. The reason why the humble beginning of the armed forces came from a frontier force. You must also remember that in the early 1900s, Africa was the subject of a scramble by colonial powers. Okay, the United States, of course, was one who aided and abetted our territorial integrity somehow. That's how the United States came in to assist the armed forces, starting as far back as the frontier. The frontier meaning the border, because we were facing so much incursion and people were encroaching on our land, the Shabro Island on one side, and by the mainland axis going towards the Ivory Coast on the other side. There's Granada on the other side, and then Guinea on this side. So we were bamboozled by French, English, and even Portuguese colonists. So we had to have a force that primarily set up to protect the frontier, meaning the border. Um, that's the primary role of the armed forces of Liberia. And of course, in downtime, the army has been used for so many purposes. Remember, one time they were even tax collectors. I remember the hot tax war. If you read Liberian history, it was primarily involved. So there's been time when the armed forces has been used for. I mean, armed forces have been used for domestic purposes. I mean, it happens here. Sometimes they use the National Guard, but then once you put the army against the general population, of course, it becomes one of a very unpopular endeavor, because people believe that you should be facing the other side, not us. And so there will always be this fracas. So after the issue of the tax war, the hard tax war, of course, they repackaged the armed forces and they rebranded it to LNG, Liberian National Guard. Okay. from the Liberian Frontier Force (LFF) to Liberian National Guard.
But what
And
I'm concerned about the current configuration now of this army of 2100. With 1,800 active, and some people have deserted posts, and it could be because they're not getting paid, or there's no lodging, and the military barracks are not equipped to hold them all. Do you think this army is capable, because we're advancing to Armed Forces Day, and it is important for us to really scrutinize our army and make sure that it's capable of, protecting our country?
certain issues are sensitive issues. That's why I say, if we sit on the global media and say our army is not capable, we're prone to exposing our own national territorial integrity. And I'll be the last person to
To say that,
make, yes. But
agree.
like I said, the devil is in the detail. The reason I say the devil is in the detail, matter of fact, I've heard from other areas that even this coming armed forces day may not be celebrated because of the same financial issues. But I was just laying the road leading to where the army has always have its own problem. 1990 was, of course, a bigger scale civil war, so the army involved. But some people took it differently, right?
So, quick question before you just hold that thought. What would you say was the army size before the war?
Before the war, we were pretty close to like three, four times the size of this army right now.
So we're talking in the ballpark of 10,000 people.
Yes.
Okay, and that would be the conglomeration of the different units, including the Coast Guards and all of that.
Yeah, because the military itself was serving in different capacity. Engineering battalion
Hmm.
were teaming up with public works. They had their own endeavors out there. Some people were assigned in different regions, in parts of the country, and that has been the role of the army. In downtime, of course, we do domestic work, or we are domesticated in the sense that we take care of the internal needs of the nation. But before the war, we were 10,000. Especially closing to the war, we were somewhere around 8,000 until some 2,000 plus people were recruited because
So what would be
this
some
is
of the
what
reasons? Why you think would be some of the reasons why this army is 2,100, disproportionate to the current population size, when back then we were probably 2.5 to 3 million people, and today we've expanded in population size, but yet the army is now undermanned. Do you do you
one
think
is
it's
in
the current configuration? Is it logistics?
no 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 no
Are there
one is
barriers you know
interest
about?
one is interest from the national government. Like I said, when Madam Sirleaf came, their intention was to actually dissolve the army, and there were
Because she was
debates.
protected by United Nations peacekeepers.
Not necessarily. Someone who said displaced aggression. She had her own problem because they believed that the role of the army during the war should not even warrant them to remain a national force because they did not perform that mandate as expected by the Constitution. Once they were involved in all kinds of situations, of course. So Madam Salif, our own interaction with the army, don't forget that Madam Salif was the subject of constant fracas or fuss between she and Samuel Doe. So she had her own personal internal malice for not even seeing an army that bastardized her. Remember, it's natural. So once she came to power, it was time to pay back. But the intention was to abolish something called an army. People were calling for all kinds of ideas. The Amos Sawyers ran um, the governance commission. Of course, that class of people were some of the ones that felt extremely marginalized during the rule of the 1980s, and so as a result, they didn't want a recurrence of an army, all powerful army that will come again and carry on the same situation. So there were talks out there. So the idea came up. Well, let's just maintain about a battalion size at least, just so we can We can have a semblance of an army in case anything happened. Okay, and Madam Sirleaf is no longer there. But one of the reasons why the army is so poorly um, sized is the fact that interest is not shown to the army. Let's not forget that the last thing any civilian administration want to do is to encourage a very strong army. But they are looking more inwardly politically. They're not looking at external aggression. They're not looking at other situation, crisis situation that might occur. Why they can even use the army for like Ebola. Other countries do,
Mm-hmm.
Ebola, people rendering, even the emergency period under Mr. Weir, the army was used to man the emergency, pronouncement that was made. So I'm only saying that until people shift their mind away from protecting their own political well-being and look at the bigger cost for which an army should exist in a land, they will always play with the army somehow. Right now, the army has lots of challenges. I can guarantee you. Um, it even ranged from the fact that certain slots that exist within the army right now have not been filled, or if they're there, people are there only acting. The only individual right now with the power probably to promote or demote anybody is the chief of staff, and that's not his role. He recommends. You understand? The chief of
Mm-hmm.
staff can recommend other high power. The military has a council of
Mm-hmm.
which the chief of staff or chief of army staff sits in the middle as the chair. Okay, but we have so many other axes that are attached to that chair, that council, and those other individuals have not been even been positioned. Right now, I don't even hear about JAG, like a Judge Advocate General, one of the most important um, pieces of the army. In the fact that if you have a Judge Advocate General, he takes care of the legal issues surrounding, you know, conduct unbecoming people, going out of their own professional conduct to do things. You have to also provide soldiers, you know, justice. You don't just dismiss somebody, lock them up, and throw them out of the army. They have to go through something called due process. And the JAG, along with the commander of the of the the tribunal, as you want to call it. We should have a commander of the tribunal. The Judge Advocate General sits at the Ministry of Defense, and then the commander of the tribunal actually he manages any situation arising that gets to that level of someone being court martial, for instance. You have to have a unit, an entity that sits primarily, and these are all legal minds as well.
Okay. So let me ask you this question here. What would be some of the reasons why I know that the reconfiguration of the army was you must be a high school graduate now. In the past, that was not the case. This time around, you must be a high school graduate. Do you find that as an impediment to enlist more men and women? Because the barrier would be the group from 1990 to 2020 is that's about what 30 years, and that's bulk of our young people who should be enlisting in the army.
Right.
But a lot of them didn't have the opportunity to go to school and to graduate from high school. What
Mhm.
is the pathway? What do you think that we can do to accommodate this population size within 1990 to that of 2020? Because it's critical. If we can't continue to operate on a smaller size army, if there's a need for us to beef up, you know, but we're still putting those stringent rules and regulations in place regarding high school graduate.
One of my own disagreement with when the bar was set at high school graduate. um, was the fact that all the able-bodied men, if you look at Liberia, we have like three classes of citizens. You have the younger ones who are from infancy to probably before the age of, I mean, their teens, before 18. And then you have a bulk of our population is from age 21 to 35. It was that class of Liberians that was affected by the war. So if a child was 5 years then, he probably around 35 now. And then they went through that war. By the time they turned around, they were adults. So, but life does not stop there. Let's not forget that even though people have gone through war, that's why the demobilization process itself was extremely important. And it should have taken into consideration these people. Well, in Liberia, of course, people, that was the hype of people putting money in their pockets. So who's going to prioritize someone who was a child soldier that probably were disadvantaged from going to school to no fault of their own because they didn't bring war. And some of them joined the war. Some of them were even forced to join the war. And so many other reasons why that class of Liberians were disadvantaged. So are you going to count them out from the function of society? I'll say no. There are still some of them who are extremely skillful. Um, so some of us have proposed that instead of keeping this hype towards the high school graduation as a key requirement for joining the army, devise some technical expectations. Take for instance here in the United States we have a GED system. The GED system is an equivalency of high school. Okay, but you can recruit as much people and tell them, we'll put you through that GED program. If a man has, a unique ninth grade education, and you certificate them while they're in the army, you bring them in, create the expectation. You branch them off. Do some will not only do academic work because the military work is a skill work. You and I talked, and then I told her, I said, there are engineers who go through college, but there are mechanics who never read, but they'll fix a car the same way. Both of them have the IQ to
Yep.
repair a car, but one has, a different skill set. They have an academic skill leading to the actual work. The other guy has on the
The
job
practical.
training, practical training, but both of them will do the same job. You can't say because somebody didn't go to high school, but they have the IQ to fly a plane, you can make them pilot. You understand? Once they acquire the skill to become pilot, you put them in the cockpit. So I said, bring some of these people in. Forget about this. We are conservatively, at the time, we were like maybe 4 million people. Out of that, if you actually do, not even up to 17% of our people are really educated at that level. Let alone you talking about high school. We're just coming from a crisis. So I didn't see the wisdom in making high school graduation as a key requirement. And then people who actually graduated from high school, you think everybody will be willing to just go into an army? Not unless you have a conscripting where you draft people, you force them to do at least 2 years of military service, but that has to be extremely coordinated.
Yeah.
So either you attract people by benefits, or you devise means, and the benefit could be we'll give you high school education, we'll pay your high school, and when you come from there, right away you have a job. You understand, through the
Yeah.
GED. So people should not use their own emotional, dynamics to just make laws. You have to make laws in consonance with the present reality. And the present reality is that we are not so much an educated society. The war made it worse.
Worse.
People who should be serving now have been disadvantaged. Some of them cannot even read and write, but you can commit them through that GED process. They'll be able to read and write, and they'll be able to interpret manuals, field manuals. They'll be able to interpret technical writing for operation of their tools that they need for the army. Plus, there'll be military people.
So
You
let's
know.
come back to to the issue here. If you look at, there's many of the young men want to join the army who are masons, meaning the guys who lay blocks, plumbers. Some of the guys went to LOIC. Maybe the
Mhm.
army could create a vocational program and then do recruiting from that vocational program to bring those guys in, like the infantry battalion we're talking about, mechanics who can help to work on the armor cars and the trucks and stuff like that. But there will be military guys. Of course, they're going to go through the infantry training, which of course
Mhm.
you don't really need the highest education to
Mhm.
go, and get the infantry training. That would be another way that you can bring some very, credible people with a skill set, or develop the skill set to serve the country in another way, rather than always thinking that they have to be there for, fighting purpose.
That's what I'm saying, that you commit them to that industrial opportunity program, which will be in different facets. It could be people will be going there to those who want to actually go to college later on and branch off in other parts of the army. Of course, they will have their spot. Those who want to come in and do skill building to be able to afford them a profession while they're in the army. There is something called military occupational specialty, MOS. So when you come in, you acquire that occupational specialty skill. That's what you're going to be doing in the army. There are folks who are, communication people. Some folks are, just professional people in there, in auto mechanic. Some folks are just weapon specialists. We had some very good people from. We used to laugh at some of the old people from Lofa, the Lama boys, but those guys, they knew the weapon like crazy. You understand? They could care less about the name, but they know where every pin goes into that weapon. And when there's a breakdown of a weapon, you just give them in 2 seconds, they'll fix it. Say, Chief, here's your weapon, it's ready. You understand? Those kind of people don't have to go read engineering. They have that skill set, and they acquire the discipline through those vocational training. That's why BWI was one of the biggest corridors that took care of the education of our soldiers and skill building. Most military people before the war would tell you, I went to BWI. You understand? And then later on came the Liberal Opportunity Industrial Center, LOIC. Some of our soldiers were there as well. So the thing is about skill creation and skill implementation. It's not an academic corridor. You understand? Us Liberians were too focused on this academic thing. That's why they make high school graduation a key requirement. Now
All
you
right.
join in the army.
Okay, let's shift here. There's a post from one of the viewers here. His name is Ekudayo Dixon, and he said here that what we need is to beef up border security with at least 10,000 men or men and women to ensure we plug all of our inadequate ports of entry into the nation. Secondly, we need a police force of 5 to 10,000 police officers in each county, with Montserrado County having at least 10,000. Our security forces, such as the NSA and others, should have a comparable size of the police, around 5,000 personnel each. When it comes to our actual military, Liberia requires a force of 50,000, professionally trained to adequately defend the nation, and another 50,000 in reserve, like you have the reserve here. Do you think
You
this is
know,
astronomical, or is
eh,
it reasonable? I know that you talked about civilian president may not focus on that. It could
yeah.
be a military
I
president who will
mean, I
focus on
mean,
something.
those numbers are conservative, in the sense that you have to take into consideration so many other factors. You actually need, for every 100 persons, you need at least one soldier. That's what the poverty interim poverty reduction strategy under Madam Sirleaf called for. And so that 50,000 that individual suggested sounds reasonable, but let's not forget that we can also improvise in terms of um, how we make the other forces, like the civilian forces, like the police, the immigration, and drug enforcement agency, and all of this personnel. We can actually, uh, create something called military in the waiting or standby reservists. In other words, when they go to do their basic, you actually send them over to a military basic training. So when they come back, they branch off and then they go and do their own individual occupational specialty that will put them as consummate professionals within their own realm of operation. But then, when there is something, at least you have a reserve unit within those forces that you can use readily for military operation. But I don't see us getting to that 50,000 right away. Because one, we don't even have the logistic. Two, we don't even have the resources to cover that. And um, I'm still angry at the fact that there was a sizable army that was trained, even though we had some bad people among them. My own advice would have been go in and do a thorough vetting and try to bring some of these people. You understand? These people you could put them in that reserve that the gentleman Dixon is talking about. You know, the older the soldier is, the more skillful they are. That's why they say old soldier is always a soldier. Once a soldier, always a soldier. Old soldier never dies. We have all of these kinds of things to tell you that there's people that you laying out there, you could actually utilize the skill. You can put them in a reserve entity. You understand? And that reserve also is ready. And let's not forget that Liberia has one of the poorest borders. You understand? Our borders are very, very, vulnerable. I mean, people come from other countries, Ghana and so on. They just walk in and set up
Just
shop.
walking,
Yeah, they set up
walking
their
like walking
kitchen.
into the park.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like I always say, when I was in Cape Mount, just out of curiosity, I went to go see some of the access point. I just took, one of those Land Rover Jeeps one day and sat and went all over from Congo all the way, and I was able to come up with some 52 access point where nobody can actually question you. Just walk in. A country should not be that vulnerable.
Yeah.
A
Do you
country.
think that is attributed to the Mono River Union, that relationship the three countries have to keep their borders protected, from external threat? Could that be the reason why? Is it
No,
just kind
no,
of, I mean,
there's
meaning
nothing. There's nothing.
I'm talking about the looseness that people living on the borderline can just cross over, do things back and forth, and nobody asks question. Do you think that that could be one of the reasons? Let's just do 1 minute because we got to go to break.
The patents of the war should have taught us lesson that when your borders are unmanned, majority of the attacks that occurred on the capital came from um, the western side of the border, Sierra Leone. You understand? If a county that close to your city center, your business center, your business capital, that place is supposed to be thoroughly manned. But we say I've not learned lesson. But I think there are certain places within that part of Liberia that that are totally cut off from activities that occur in Central. We focus too much on Morovia. That's why when something happened, before you look, they say they are poor river. Because
Because yeah, because
really
we
we don't have any deterrent force that will stand there and say, you know what, let's battle these people, and it can take us at least a month. But before you look, somebody they say, oh, the rebels right here at Pearl River, they're shooting behind Royceville. Boom. The next place naturally would be Morovia.
yep.
And we still have not. It's not because of the Mana River Park does not have anything that says people can just walk into your territory. Um, it's just that people take advantage when nobody to stop them. That's how people break the law. So we have to pay attention to that, and that area stretches as far as the Western Cluster. We're talking about Bomi has an entry, Cape Mount has an entry, even Bopolo, which is now Lower Lofa, has an entry. Lofa itself, wide and very big place, has so many entries. So what the guy was saying, Dixon, made sense about mining some of these areas. And but you think Morovia, the politician, the leadership there, want to pay attention. He said, "No, man, I'll be here. Nothing will happen." You understand? And so as a result, people really not paying attention to. That's why there are certain people who are just governing themselves. If there's a place in in Cape Mount, I mean, the erosion had eaten the place to the extent you see this huge forage. I mean, just like one area, the one area, the erosion cut off one area from the rest of the that
The
part of the
mainland.
country. Yeah, and so people on that side live probably under different jurisdiction, and
Okay.
those on this side live under different jurisdiction. I mean, that's just how Liberia looking.
Just before we go to break, I wanted to ask you this question. Quite frankly, Remy, do you think at this time, considering the global threat everywhere in our world, should Liberia and Liberians and the government be security minded?
Oh, I think so. I think the initiative was started in the early part of our war when that was why forces like Black Berets were created. Those forces were actually there to take care of some of those internal dynamic, help train community watch, and go into communities and set up watch team because these are all the defensive mechanism of a country. In this country, you go into certain neighborhood, don't think you're now watched. You are being watched. Maybe the grandma sitting on the couch, she's looking at every move you're making, and that's her role. And I think we should begin to inculcate some of this community sensitivity on our citizens. That take for instance, the people are beginning to vandalize those poles. People are bringing down those new structure that government has placed up, and this is not the first time. I said when Madam Selif was there, probably about some 1,500 poles were planted around Morovia. What happened to them? They brought all of them down, and scrap them and sell them to scrap dealers. Now people come later and say, "Oh, this government has done nothing." Well, it is our responsibility also as a people to be able to protect the infrastructure that protecting us. If a light pole is positioned in a particular dark alley of a community, it's not protecting President Weir or President Sirleaf. It's protecting you. So you jealously protect that particular light pole. Set up your own watch, but our community policing also should be able to extend to those kinds of initiatives where they set up watch so that they have team leads. They have people who they actually keep guard, like soldiers and police officers. They keep guard. So if they're out there, they see anybody, undesirable person climbing to take the lamp from the pole, definitely you alarm the neighborhood. Boom! Before you look, everybody is out. If they do that constantly, then these neighborhoods are secured. People will be
Hmm.
afraid to come there at night. I want to
Okay.
believe that.
All right, thank you. If you're just joining us, this is Breach Radio Africa, Ashford Garley Live. Ashford is not here tonight, but we have in studios retired Colonel Remie Gray, Remie Gray. He's our guest. We're discussing the armed forces of Liberia. Um, our broadcast can be heard in Liberia on Top FM 105.3, and that is in Grangita County. We also come live on Joy FM 101.5 and Live FM 104.1. If you just joining us, a quick reminder, we come on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time and 1 a.m. GMT. Wherever you are, we want to invite you to like our page. We broadcast on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. Invite a friend, share the link, increase our followings. We'd love for you to always do that. What Bridge Radio does is we enlighten, we educate, and we talk about the issues. So we want to encourage you all to continue to invite, a friend. Zizi Kaba, Emmanuel Jackson, Gary McCall, Fokba Johnson, Alexander, Emmanuel Hayes, um, Ronika Joe, Charlene Dunbar, Sia Sia, Ranika Joe, Evelyn Mamintar, all you guys, we want to welcome you tonight. If you're celebrating your birthday today, whatever the occasion, we just want to say happy birthday and happy occasion. We wish you many more of such an important celebration. Elizabeth Nan, Florence Taylor, Wesley Chill, Mohammed Conan, Adolphus, Prince B. Lavala, all you folks, we say welcome to Sam Collar, Agnes Samukai Moba. Welcome to our broadcast tonight. We have in studios Conor Remie Gray. Remie, again, we're back. In fact, I should say that the lines are open now. You can begin to call 404-272-2808. Again, 404-272-2808. So currently, I remember growing up, there were a lot of barracks in Liberia. Barracks in Shuffling, barracks in Todi, Nama, and so forth. Where are those barracks now? What do you know about the current barracks? I know the only operating barracks I know would be Todi and that of Shuffling, because Shuffling is right there on the Rawalsby Highway, and everyone who goes to Liberia can see the barrack right there and it's operational. But how about the other barracks? Do you know if they're functioning?
Mr. Sheldon, after the war, we even increased the number of barracks around the country under the leadership of Honorable Brani Samukai. We beef up the barracks, the presence of military in other areas. I don't think security wise, if it's safe for me to discuss the number of barracks we have, but we do have quite a fair presence on every part of our country. We in central Liberia, between Bon County and of course Magibi County, we have one station there. We have um, presence in Marbackley area. We have presence. I mean, so we do have quite a bit. But it is just the number of people to fill some of these areas. That's why I say either we find ways how to. The barracks are not the problem. It's the availability of people who are willing to serve, and some of them feel that the from the get go the people who brought them in were not truthful. They will promise you a certain set of benefit, but when you come in, it's like you're there. It's a main complaint I've heard from folks. Well, we went through some of those same things.
I don't want to say the barracks, and I don't want to say the barracks are not a problem. My concern is I don't want those barracks to be dilapidated, left into ruin. Like you see, a lot of our public buildings are left to ruin. The Duca Hotel, Hotel Africa, EJ Raw, all of these important structures that we took millions of dollars to build, they're all being deserted. So I don't want these barracks deserted. Are these barracks still functional? Are they there, or that's the question. Just one
We
minute.
know
I have a call I need to go to.
they are there. They are there. They are
Okay.
there. They are functional, and we
Okay.
do have entities within the army that take care of their own facilities.
All
I
right.
mean that's a top priority.
Okay. Thank you.
Where
Let me
we
go to
live,
the
yeah,
line.
it's not
All
in
right.
ruin. Yeah.
Caller, are you there?
Yes,
Yeah, come in, caller. What's your name and where
yes.
you calling from?
This is Emmanuel Jackson. I'm calling from Boston, Massachusetts.
Well, in fact, Emmanuel, you were on a few nights ago, and I think you had some concerns about this topic, right? Am I right?
Uh, yeah, I think so. I think we're discussing about the pandemic, saying that a precaution should be taken before we have emergency like we have with Ebola. So I think that's the question I raised. That's the issue I raised.
Okay. There was a caller who was concerned about, Liberia being aid dependent, and it makes the
Okay.
country susceptible to,
I,
any kind of threat.
I think I raised that issue too on the
Okay.
last
So what's your
program. Yeah.
concern tonight regarding the army?
Yeah. Well, I'm from a military family. My uncle was chief of staff in the army, and my sister was in the army. My brother, late Rudolph, was in the army and from Kipma. And there's certain discipline of the army that I see is necessary for economic development in the country. One of which was the PRC first year. I was in Liberia between 1980 and 81, and was saying, and others, they were saying those was not smart, but those guys were well organized. That first PRC administration, they had the country in order, and their first celebration, I can remember they raised tremendous a lot of money from private companies and other, and I mean, there was a huge difference of discipline in the country than we see today. So I would like to know if Brother Gray can tell me if the military can be of importance for economic development in the country. As he's talking also too about the porous borders, I think the military can be of great assets too to protect the country and also be enforced with economic development as we saw in Ghana with Jerry Rawling, and we see now in Myanmar or Burma with the military that did a tremendous work there before they turned over to a civilian rule. So I just like for him to give some analysis in that fashion.
All right. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you so much for calling in. Now, Remy, you heard him.
Yeah, Emmanuel. Hi, my brother. The thing is, your family, immediate family, we sort of like we were close family. General Jackson, of course. Yeah, you're talking about Rudolph Jackson, who came in the army, I think either 78 or so. And of course, he was an older and bigger brother. His brother Jimmy Jackson, Lawrence. We're talking about ladies like their sisters. These are all good people. Moti. We're talking about Tutu and all these people. Matter of fact, we used to take the trip to go to Tala all the time. These are very good people, and indeed, so Mr. Jackson there is no stranger to me, one can say. But I just wanted to say before the war, we had a functional agriculture battalion also in the army that produced quite a bit. There were times when we used to talk about armed forces rice, and those rice and those produces were sold to common people. Matter of fact, the army in downtime sometimes were the one growing some of this crop, and so they were not just sitting down cleaning their boots or fixing their cleaning their weapons. They would go to work. The engineering battalion was one of the most functional parts of the armed forces because the late Samuel Doe himself was extremely interested in us, matriculating to being able to feed ourselves. And so he was extremely interested in that area. So he did everything possible. The agriculture battalion had lots of equipment, and those equipment, of course, they some of them laid in ruins when the war came. But I think it's one area of focus. But again, we're talking about civilian administrations that have their own apprehension about the army. So, and even if you're saying something extremely productive, that what happened in the 1980 could never occur anymore in a country where the military would step in to take power. I mean, today's reality even makes it extremely difficult for a military organization to just march into the executive mansion and seize power. you have quite a bit to contend with. There are so many parks now that talk about any internal aggression will have intervention right away. So I think the focus now should mean not just to pay those people monthly check every month. They should deploy them to work in different sector. And one of the most productive sectors that the military can come into work to help would be the agriculture battalion. They can spearhead, even some of this vocational thing I'm talking about, that we can devise those plans. You bring this able-bodied people, while they're getting their GED, at the same time they work, and whatever produce and profit they get from those things, they'll be able to at least have stipend until they become regular military people. You understand? So there are so many ideas to trade around. It's just a matter of us taking advantage of that young workforce we have there right now, that leave every day ziggy in the street and all that stuff. Bring some of these people into productive circle and make them busy.
And you're right,
And
because Remy, the young people are too much, just wasting in the country. I
exactly.
mean, you see thousands of young people just running the street, whoa, 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 and zege, zege, muya, muya, zege, zege, muya. I mean, just doing nothing, nothing.
Volcano,
Okay,
when we were growing
look
up,
at it.
you
The
ask all the children in
highway
the country.
is dirty. They can put the kids to work to cut side of roads, around the country. But I have a call on the line. Let me go to this caller quick. He's been waiting. He's been patient. Caller, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, come in, caller. What's your name and where you calling from?
My name is Gary McCall. I call from Boston, Massachusetts.
Come in.
And
We're talking about the armed forces of Liberia. What's your comment or question for our studio guest?
um, I don't have a question. I have an input because I served the army for 8 years, the restructure AFL.
Good,
And
good.
yeah, I went to some of the best schools and stuff like that. But to tell you the fact, there is a serious problem that need to be addressed, or else you're going to lose all the men. Government spend, the American government spend millions of dollars to train. First of all, I would tell you the morale in the army is very, very, very low. Low in the sense that, to tell you the fact, the reason the Armed Forces Day celebration was cut off is not because of pandemic. Because look at the fight. Just the gone Sunday, you have thousands and thousands of Liberians pack up the Samuel Kando Sports Stadium. So if you're worried about pandemic, you wouldn't be packing the stadium like that. But the reason the program is cut off because there's no money. The government is not supporting the army. I can tell you that for a fact. I got people there I speak to. The morale is very, very low. Some of those barriers are in darkness as we speak.
Mm.
When we first started the army, some of them made the sacrifices. We started with $35. They said $40 on base, but if you take out ties, you go to $35. We took that. We graduated. It was $81. We stood that time. We went through until we were taking somewhere around $225 over a bag of rice. But as you speak to you presently, the rice is being cut off. Soldiers are not getting rice again. No curry in the barracks. Even the same soldiers for training, they don't come back. I was fortunate to go to China because I used to serve the engineer community as the senior NCO for transport, logistics. But there's no merit system. You cannot send an army a soldier out for training. He comes back and he still make the same pay and stay along with his peer. Then what's the use of his training? So a lot of those training were not taken into consideration. You find out that most of those men that were trained are leaving the army. You know, in every organization, you have bad apples. Take for example, you call the army man smoking grass and stuff. It's normal for the army man. Punish that man from the army, but the discipline was so strong that they took most of the good guys just because of minor reasoning and stuff like that. We understand you want to impose discipline, but the UCMJ is there. They got punishment for that. But none of the knowledgeable guys now you see they of the army. Those that are there, the morale is just low. So there's serious problem that need to be addressed. And you're
All
talking
right.
about increasing the size of the army. It's not about increasing the size. You can find a very small army, efficient, well
Mhm.
paid, well equipped. They can do the job. It's not about size. It's
Okay.
about commitment.
All
And
right. Thank you.
commitment got to do with salary
All right.
and incentive.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, my brother. I think those were some very valid points. Remy, if you look at it, he's right. It's not almost about the size, but it's the effectiveness, well paid. Can you imagine the military of a country, $12.9 million for its budget? We're talking salary, we're talking projects, we're talking training, we're talking logistics, and you're talking about just the Coast Guard alone. One of those boats, those guys moving around the waterway could be $1 million. So how do we protect our territorial waters? The last time we heard that Senegalese were coming over there and taking all and fishing in our waters. You understand me? Ghanaian canoes leave all the way from Ghana and come into our waters and fish and carry the fish.
Mhm.
So even the Coast Guard budget should be $12 million. Needless to say, the entire military of the country, Remy. This is a serious matter. And then you got guys who in our government got $12 million in the bank account. I'm telling you, there are guys in our government got $12 million in the bank account.
Of course, of course.
You understand me? And the whole army that's supposed to protect the country.
You
Coming.
know, Mr. Sheldon, I want to thank Gary McCoy. He made some brilliant points. And I can tell you, to train one military person, you're looking at several $1 million. Um, when the United States came into the to provide technical assistance, sometimes when they call this money, people wonder whether that physical cash they can just transfer, in government's account. But training alone, you understand, comprise um, a bulk of that budget, because when you train one soldier, that's why it was so important that those people who served the army previously should have been retained somehow, with the bad one from among them, of course, um, and retain them, because they already have the orientation and the training. And some of those people, it costs the country billions of dollars, because the way all this technical assistance are done, they they are given to you, cogent on certain expectation. So when the United States say I spent $310 million, I can tell you that the bulk of that would be training, and then there's a portion left for logistic, uniform, and so on and so forth, and to even house the soldiers when we travel to international, academies to train. The government, for government to even meet that portion of the stipend. So among foreign soldiers that come by, Liberians are sometimes some of the most sorrowful soldiers you find there, because people are struggling.
Let me please
You
pause
understand?
quick. There's a there's an RS Bangura keep asking for the number. The number is posted right on the banner, 404-272-2808. The number is posted right on the banner if you're watching the program. So it's posted 404-272-2808. Continue, Remy.
Yeah. So the thing about it is, when these people struggle so much, as McCoy was saying, back then, before you even before you are even recommended for training, there's a promotion waiting you, and you're just going to go fill in the required training. When you come back, you spearhead that particular promotion and retrain others. So it's trainer training. You understand? So you're not just coming back to join the general, your company, or your battalion or your unit. You come in with a skill that you're going to spread around the army. So by virtue of that, you're promoted with no salary and no rank. I'm not sure whether that's how it's done now because, but that's the tradition. So what McCoy is saying is hurtful. If I to advance myself, get this education, make the necessary sacrifice. Some days I went to bed hungry because um, either I go into the mess hall and eat what is there, but we can have no other countries when we train among them. For instance, I went to South Africa Military Academy when the it's attached to the University of South Africa in Cape Town. When I went there, one of my good friends was who helped me to get that scholarship. He came on my desk. So we had sent soldiers prior, and some of those people just deserted. So I said, well, you know what? I can take advantage of this, and then I went there. But um, while I was there were other soldiers from different areas, and those people will go and they don't even care for the food at the mess hall because they have their own money. Their government, send a regular stipend before even going there. But I went there with nothing. You understand? And I know that's the fate of most soldiers who are here. So when someone has made that level of sacrifice and they return to Liberia, you better have a job for them to do and promote them and give them more salary because that's the only way they will quench their thirst. That at least there's hope in the future. But I came and acquired no skill and went back home. You just deploy me, and the only thing I can do after 1 or 2 weeks, all that morale is gone, and I just look like a common person among the men. So it's not okay. I agree. Lots of folks will leave the army or they will come in, but they will not be able to stay there. And you think our civilian administration will pay attention to those things? That's the least worry of. You think the last thing Mr. Weir wants to see is an all-powerful army, and
Remy,
definitely.
thank you. Let me go to the line. There's a caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, this is RS Bangura.
RS Bangura.
Yes, brother.
Okay. Yeah. You've been following the conversation. We're discussing the armed forces of Liberia.
Yes.
Your comment or question, whatever it is.
All right. I have a comment. My
You gotta speak a little louder.
All right. I have a comment. My contribution has to do with exactly what we guys are discussing. The military, as my colleague said, is morale. The morale needs to be kept high. When you want a private institution, integrity, welfare, morale, especially when it comes to that military. Now, I'm a veteran. I still go to infantry and that was the Coast Guard. I'm internationally satisfied. I'm navigating anything you find on the water. But you can't send a person to school and get all the expertise. You go back home and then you gain $125 or $200. I think, okay, it's fine. That's one. That's a low morale.
Mm-hmm.
The top is eating, the banner does the work, and the morale goes to the top. Everything on NCO that is in charge does, the morale goes to the commander.
Of course.
That's how it works in the military. So the morale needs to be high because the NCO is the backbone of the military. The NCO is the backbone of the squad, the platoon, and that of the company. Now, 2006, when they started the process, they started paying for it. Also, blah blah blah, everything they get certified. Now, if you leave, for example, you leave this month or in September, you go to Bay, it's 12 months. So they have to do an initial entry training, RET or AIT.
Mm-hmm. AIT.
Initial entry training. Initial entry training in 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, they gave you 2 days to go back on Friday, coming back on Sunday. Now, going back home to your family, you carry 70 bucks for the 6 weeks. Then you're leaving, you're going back on 2 days basis, you go back. For the advanced individual training, which is ART. I'm talking about straight American setup because at the time we were there, that's what happened. And then you sign contract on a direct. The first part of your contract is signing on a direct. You want to change the country, but then they force you
because what they told the people to do. You already in boot camp. There's nothing you can do. No turnaround. Then after you go back for a bank individual training, after the 30 days, you go into the Volunteer Unit as a private soldier.
So
If
so
you want
so
to,
so RS Bangura, tell us what's the main issue.
the
Because you're
mean,
laying all your
the mean,
training. Let's talk about the main issue. What is
the
that
mean
one
issue.
thing? Hold on. What is that one thing you want change in the military?
Now, the mean thing is integrity. The mean thing is integrity. If you can be a colonel, can be a general having it, it needs to go down. That's the morale. The mean thing is the morale because if the military is not well paid and not well taken care of, you don't have to make $1,000, but the pay has to be consistent. I can tell you today, the military up to date does not have a specific date for salary, for payment. Military not only just wait, oh, it's there. Oh, I don't know what it's there. Oh, that's how they take in Nigeria. I'm telling you, that's a low morale. So if you have such a military to the border, it takes one program or two programs to do anything stupid because they're going to give money and they'll pass through. I just deal with my family hungry and then somebody bring money and pass it through. So that we're going to lack integrity. So in order to have an integrity on the Bible institution, you have to stand to a pay rate and you have to be it because, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your points. We appreciate it. So Remy, I think the caller is right. The morale is killed because people have this grandiose thought when they go overseas and get this good military training. They come back, they want to serve their country, but they don't want to serve their country pro bono. They want to be paid. And it's important for these senators who sitting over there on Capitol Hill to be protected. They need a solid military. They need a solid police force. They are the ones who making all that money, and they're susceptible to gangsterism. People can can go on them. That's why it's important to have the best security apparatus in the country that will protect everyone equally. But because they can, own their own little private security and pay, and some other guys paying their private security good money out of pocket. Whereas that money could go back to the military, beef up the police, beef up, the different security structures in the country to keep the people safe.
Mr. Bangura made points. You can just tell that. Look, if the men down there, when I was, supervisor over a company, like a company commander, when I was a captain, then under 6th Battalion, which is bombing. My men were my priority. Um, I always made sure that if I'm getting any benefit, it should trickle down. Because if you don't have morale in the military, there will be war in the country. People just sit down and just watch. The worst that can happen to you is for even those people who understand the profession to join the other side. That takes away everything from you. That's what happened when our war came. So what Robert was saying in essence is that be upfront. We don't have much to offer you, but we really want your service. You understand? Make it incremental. Every day on the 30th of the month, your salary will be there. It will be wired into your account. If anything, make sure that that promise is kept. Because you see, that one of the reasons why we used to say back in the day, I'm going to fuck care in the community. You take your badge and your gun under you, and then you go in the community and start harassing people. So it's a perennially old problem, and you have to be on the field. That's why it's good for you to come from the infantry level. I'm an infantry trained soldier, so when you go on the field, your family behind, they have all the expectation, and then what's that? $70, man, in this day and age. But that's again, it goes to the point that the government does not prioritize national security. That's why they try to beef their own personal security. They think that's enough. How many security Dole didn't have? Where he ended? What about President Talbot? Yeah? What about Taylor? How many men he didn't have around him? Remember when all hell breaks loose? Definitely, you are going to be the first target. And
Absolutely.
all that, personal security thing you're talking about, it will not work. Now we're talking about this personal private security. It brings to mind and the issue that occurred on the field over the weekend with Senator Dillon. I don't want people to see private people providing uh, aid to senators and other people are just private people. Those people are on payroll. Now, this is one thing why the senator, their payroll is so huge. It's an office by itself because you have other staffers that are there. Okay, so when somebody is serving in those capacity, they're an obligation to the state or taxpayer money. So they should be well coordinated as well. And if you want to train people to serve in those capacity, there were times before the war where soldiers were serving as bodyguards.
Hmm.
You understand? So you don't share the money around too much because you do have that person who is actually trained to protect people. That's his work function. You understand? So, definitely we've got to do something about, our national security problem, and I always blame the national security advisor to the president. I think either they're not paying attention to people like the national security advisor, or if they do, probably they really have lost their track of what to actually do, because sometimes efficiency, as my brother Emmanuel, or I don't know if it's McCoy that I mean Bagura that made the statement that you don't need a large force, but rather you need a sophisticated small unit that is extremely tactical. It's true, you do need, um, but the reason why you need more men is because the focus is not only about warfare. There are other internal needs that Liberia may have that you can be deployed to perform. It could be even agriculture battalion, for instance. It could be this community neighborhood watch, how people will go and help set up team and train people. I mean, there are so many needs you can use the army for. So you need men to do all of that. Nobody can replicate themselves when it comes to military work. Is about presence. You have to be there. That's why I would say I'm from the front. You understand? You have to be at the forefront of everything because you are providing service, and your service is needed at that location. Okay. Now, do you think this administration or subsequent administration will want to pay attention to the army? I still put a question mark to that, and that's why the army is struggling. This current army is really struggling. All the people that make their way out. There's a guy who is an epidemiologist. I would call them people who understand. I mean, he's a medical guy.
Hmm.
Pretty much. This guy has gone for all kinds of training. Man, he's struggling right now. Such a man, you paid a man $125. Man, come on, man. Somebody who has a master's degree in epidemiology. Somebody, can you imagine? Somebody who has gone to medical school. You're not paying them the equivalent of a medical doctor. You're just giving them something like,
You know, and
porously.
and Raymond, this is unfortunate. This is unfortunate. Liberia is a country where people are not paid for their worth. I have said over and over, if I take a job in Liberia, I don't have to be a minister. Put me in a functional department within a ministry or wherever. Just pay me for my education, competencies, skills, experience, and I'm fine. I don't need title. Okay, I don't have to be the minister to make the money, or the assistant minister to make the money, or deputy minister to make the money. I can be a department head, or I can be just good at what I do and just pay me for my value. Because if it was so, people like the guys who are anchors on televisions here, like the Anderson Cooper, the Chris Cuomo, all these guys, they won't be millionaires. They're paying them for their worth. They're
Mhm,
paying them for their value. And so you say the same in the military. You should pay people based on the accumulation of ranks, the
mhm,
accumulation of knowledge, their experience, their tenure in the army, rather than just give people crap. Who can survive on $125? You know, who
It,
can?
and,
In
there is a compliment there. Us Liberians who are rice.
the world we found ourselves.
Hmm.
But what is that one thing you miss about the real army, the old army? What is it that you missed?
My brother, we have to develop a society where people will just show appreciation for the military man. It's like the appreciation we show to our mothers because they could have done anything to you and I. We're not even going to see the light of day in this world when we were, in their cradle, in their stomach. But once she goes through that labor and she brings you out. Um, right away, the first face you see is her face. That's how it's supposed to be. And so then you start appreciating your mother. That's how people should appreciate people in those service work. For instance, before telling you exactly what I missed, but whenever somebody, we exchange on Facebook, the youngsters, they have this attitude of asking, "What have you done for Liberia? Who for here?" So I just make it short and sweet. I served for 22 years. And then they turn around, "Oh, but that was that killing army," you know, because people don't respect people's work. Now, there you have two gentlemen who I believe they're not going to go back to Liberia. You understand? To serve for what? Because it's the bulk of their life they're going to give away. I give the bulk of my life, God bless. Through some means, I found myself in the United States. Maybe I've beefed up on my Social Security. Yeah. Other than that, in Liberia, all the wars they have in there now and the problem they having with the army, the old army, it's about pension. When a man got nowhere to turn, imagine you're in the army, they're not taking care of you. How much more if you're not there? Nobody cares about you. So you see how the nation is going to be sitting on attention because lots of folks are dissatisfied. In this country, just by serving the army alone, you get discount to go to so many places. You
Mhm.
understand? Lots of things they appreciate their own. But one thing I miss about our old army was the fact that we used to eat. They used to give us food. They used to give us food. I mean, if you can come from outside, you can say that you enter any military barrack, you show your badge, you get the best food, and then you leave. That's one thing I miss. And then secondly, I mean, the army itself was
But no
just
shame, no, man, no shame. They had to feed the army to be to be ready to go to war.
no. Though Samuel Doe did not joke with that portion. He
I
didn't
mean,
play with that.
but we can also agree that he was a military man
Yeah,
and
well,
felt disenfranchised over the years of
yeah.
civilian government. And so, if
Hmm.
first military government comes to power, of course, you saw what he did. The
Hmm.
first loan of $500 million, he said, "Wait a minute, the money I'll put all in the military and market building to please my wife as well." So we understand that. So
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
those to
I,
protect
I, I miss
really
I
stay
miss
in
the
power.
I miss the regalia itself. I used to love the military uniform. And one thing I miss because you see a soldier, you can tell what they're capable of doing, and I wore some of the best uniforms, and so I miss that. I miss that portion. If you send me back in the military, one of the things I would take care of would be my uniform because the sharper the soldier, and that one thing we used to get dismissed for in the army, discharged for is general worthlessness. It's a big term, but it could be for being sloppy to wearing the uniform the wrong way. It could be many things. But it has to do mostly with your comportment as a soldier, how you appear, because you have to be a first citizen that people will copy their own, the shape of their life. The look. If you look at the military man, it's like how we see our police people. Faded uniform. Some of them look so hungry. I mean, is that the kind of guy that you want protecting you?
All right, so let's give President Weah credit. He built the 14 military hospital for the military. Um, is that something to applaud?
Anytime it comes to creation of health needs in Liberia, I think it's a plus. Whether the maintenance is another question mark. But indeed, for our population, we can't depend on just one small station called JFK. If we can equip that JFK as a referral place, and these other locations will serve the immediate community needs. It's just that we have a nation where, again, the vigilante. I hate to call that particular function as vigilante, but the community watch. One of the skills you can impart in their community policing would be to train people on first aid, so that when someone is about to deliver, and the ambulance can get into all those smaller places, there's a team of people within the community that will show up first, and provide midwifery service, and take care of that pregnancy or that individual while they're in labor, in case it's just right there. But all of that can be coordinated within the community. And the way we are in, like, bro, we have to wait for the ambulance to come, and ambulance not coming,
So the
and so
military hospital is plausible, right?
it is. It is. It is. It is. If that Fulton Military Hospital, I think I've heard some good things about it. But if we can have those kinds of clinics or stations in other sensitive part of Liberia, that will help. We need health. I mean, people still die of the maternal mortality is high, infant mortality is great. Even diabetes now, right now, is a big mortality in Liberia. And so the more hospital have, kudos, the better it is for us.
All right, so Remy, we're about to wrap up. We started a little late trying to get
Mm.
technology set up. But what is your message for the Army as she is about to celebrate another year uh, on February 11th, if that
I don't.
program is held?
I don't even know if F11 is gonna be
But let's assume
practical.
it's going to be held. What would be your message for the Army, the Liberian Army, right now, as a retired colonel who served for 22 years?
One thing I would say right now is the specialization of the other annexes to the army. The general is one person, but there are so many other functionaries that are missing right now. Or if they're there, they're silent. They're not functional. And in the army, you never know how important these positions are until you get until wartime. Now, if you don't even know who's going to serve in what, how, and when, how are you going to even be organized enough to prosecute a war? You understand? This is where the mishap sometimes can come in, because everybody's doing their own thing, because the unit is not together. So therefore, we have a loose military leadership. So my first advice would be the Minister of Defense needs to step up. That role is not one where you just go there every morning, you sit down. You got to be very creative. There are so many. I don't know why the military right now has not established that corridor, that farm corridor with the United States. We can't forget that's that's who help us. Yeah, China can come in because they want aid from you. Other people can come in, but if you have good rapport with the United States, more and more will be coming in. Right now, I'm pretty sure the United States will never get tired supporting um, the armed forces of Liberia. They will never get tired. But then you have to certainly you have to approach them on it. But if you don't have a creative leadership, Brownie was very creative. Of course, I mean, he was beside being a trained soldier. Brownie is a scholar, so he's able to sit down and draft project proposal, send it, slap it on the decks of USAID, and then before you look bomb, you're getting lots of things in terms of. Don't forget, this new army was trained by PAE, which is United States sponsorship. So I think we should not forget our core and stop being arrogant. Or, we don't care about it. China is there. No, China is a different military orientation. All that, when the boys are talking about morale, you confuse the person. If Volcano Shelton is an American trained, he has a set of value from the United States orientation that he takes with him. If you bring the British to do, you confuse Volcano Shelton. Not that he can function, but what he knows is the system he he has been used to. So I think our army right now, my brother, it's not too many zigzag going on, and that's why if most of youngsters when they come in they can't understand what's going on because like it's zigzagging, wiggling everywhere. So I think one advice I will give them is that they should be able to come back and recalibrate and see how they can coordinate that Ministry of Defense, especially with the United States military attache or the office there, and get more. They need to get more people will help them, but they need to come in with project proposal. They can't just be sitting down there and because the government itself, I don't know if they will be willing to spend big money. So, but it's the smaller incentives that you get from EU, the USA, other countries like Germany. These are the ones that help. France and all, right around there to help. But you got to approach them.
Thank you so much, Remy. Thank you
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
taking off your time to be with us here tonight on Ashford, Garley Live, Bridge Radio Africa. We want to thank you. We thought this discussion was insightful. It provided some, knowledge around our army and what needs to be done. We wish you well this evening as you take leave of us here in studio. Thanks again for coming.
All right, and I hope the army will find a commanding general because I understand that corridor is also empty.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you. So we had retired Colonel Remie Gray here, our guest tonight here on British Radio Africa. Um, we're filling without Ashford tonight. Actually, Ashford is handling some very personal issues, and so I had to broadcast by myself. But we want to thank you all for being there with us. We want to thank our sister stations in Liberia, Top FM 105.3 in Grangida, Zwedru County, Zwedru City, Grangida County. We also want to thank Joy FM 101.5 and Live FM 104.1. You can catch our broadcast on Facebook and YouTube. Um, Simultaneously, we broadcast on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we're here at 8 p.m. So keep tuned and play the Frank always. Join us. We'll be back here on Friday. This is Volcano Shelton. I want to thank all of you folks for being there with us. This evening we discussed the armed forces of Liberia. The armed forces of Liberia are sizable enough to provide support for our voters and our population that's climbing up to what we call estimated 5 million. Is it equipped? Are there logistics? Is it ready? But some of the things we learned tonight is that morale is killed in the armed forces, not much of integrity. A lot of guys have left the army who were part of this new configured army under President Ellen Johnson's relief. And today the army is now down to 2,100 men. And accordingly, from what I saw in my research, probably only 1,800 men now, men and women, who are active because some people have deserted the army. The salary is less than anything. Most of the barracks are in the dark, no electricity from what we hear, and so a lot is not being put in the army. Um, but we hope that the Armed Forces Day message will rejuvenate the military and hope that a lot of folks can come in. One of the other things we talked about here tonight with Colonel Gray is that the benchmark set to join the army is that you must be a high school graduate. And of course, that is important. But however, the population that should be joining the army between 1990 to 2020, who would be about 30 years old or 35, are all young men and women who really didn't have the time to go to school because a lot of them were affected by the war. And so one of the things he talked about is to create, some kind of pathway for them to become military personnel. Some of them can become, members of the engineering department, in other departments, agriculture department. Of course, they will have the low infantry skill set to be able to, protect the country. Another thing we talked about is protecting our borders. Our borders are very, very loose. We don't have a lot of men at the borders around the sub-region. So we hope that all of these things we talked about tonight, President Weah and his, officials of government will begin to pay attention to these things because it's very important to protect our borders from any potential of external threat. We can always sit there and say, "Oh, we're waiting for America." You saw what happened in the Civil War. America did not put boots on the ground in Liberia. So we have to do it ourselves, and we have to protect ourselves. I want to thank you, and I'm taking leave of you now and say we'll be back here on Friday. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Volcano Shelton. Have a good night.
Seki opesinga ya lalemu mwana na komine sika na lingaka esalaka nga pasi na motema na motema na molema